this meme that was going around, and I just thought this was funny, where it has Jesus giving this speech, and it has this, like, I don't know, religious image of Jesus sitting on a rock, and his disciples are sitting there, and he says, you must love, God with all your heart, all your strength, with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And then the disciples say, well, what if they're from a foreign country? Or what if they support Green Bay Packers? And what if they, like, all these exceptions to the law? And then Jesus says, where did I lose you on the word love? And I just thought that was funny because, unfortunately, I think we really do look for exceptions. It's easy to say that we believe in love. But really, if you love, there's no exceptions. And so when the Pharisees of all people asked Jesus, what, in a word, what is your philosophy boiled down to? What's your whole theology? And Jesus sums it up by actually reciting a prayer. And that's kind of important to know. When it says you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and with all your strength, that's actually a very famous Jewish prayer. That's what all theology, Jesus says, boils down to, is loving God and other people with all your heart, mind, and strength. And the prayer that he's quoting is called the Shema. And the Shema, it is like the most famous prayer in the Old Testament. So if you're Jewish, and I know I've mentioned this, I don't care. I love the Shema. Love it, love it, love it. I learned how to sing it in Hebrew because I do love saying it. And the Shema is, if you're Jewish, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is pray the Shema. Listen, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. But when it says one, it means oneness, like all of us. So if you do it in sign language, this is the image. The Lord your God is oneness. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then Jesus adds, and your neighbor as yourself. But every Jew would wake up with that prayer. When you go to bed, it's the last prayer on your lips. And supposedly when you die, you're supposed to try and die with that prayer on your lips. But not only that, and I love this image, that God commands it to write it above their door in every home. So, like I have one in my house, the Jews put it in a little box and nail it to their door. If you've ever seen that, it's a prayer for love. I think that is so beautiful. Think about that. What if everybody had written above their door this reminder to love with all your strength? Isn't that interesting? And the Shema, it's not supposed to be lived out just like Larry's going to do it. For us to really learn how to love with all our heart, mind, and strength and each other, it's written for a community. When God says you must pray this, the you is all of us. So Jesus makes a prayer the law of our religion. The law of our religion is to love with all our heart, mind, and strength. And then he equates that with loving others. So if you don't love others, even if you don't love yourself, then you don't fully love God. And it's important to know because all the readings, it's pretty obvious, deal with love. The responsorial psalm, I love you, Lord. The first reading actually is about love. And to explain it, you have to understand that religion is a marriage between us and God. And when that section comes up in the first reading, it's when God marries the people. And in the Jewish rite of marriage, you have to, before you make your wedding vows, get married, you make your vows on what you believe. And God's vows are really interesting. God makes vows to us, where God says, I'm going to give you the whole thing. Not really. God says, you are nothing people. You are slaves. You didn't even have your own land, and I fell in love with you. So if this marriage is going to work, you're going to have to love other people as well. And then he lists the 10 Commandments, things that will let you know if you've stopped loving. But then he continues, and that's where the first reading is. After the Ten Commandments, there's all these hundreds of laws. And it's about this, that this love, if you're married to love itself, then love affects everything. It affects the way you do business. You don't cheat people in business because love doesn't do that. If you really are married to love, then yes, you care for the stranger and the poor. That when Roseanne was reading it reminded me of this priest who gave this homily once where he says, love the poor or don't go to heaven. And that's all he said. He says, you want to doubt me? Prove me wrong. Look at the Bible. Love is a verb. Like, yeah, if you're married to God, then you try and love the poor. Or even in today, it gets into this strange law about making sure that the poor have something to sleep with. God is so in love with people that even if somebody poor doesn't have a blanket, then you give them a blanket. And I just mentioned it because it comes up in the first reading, and we have a bin outside asking if anybody has any extra blankets, donate one to the poor. We'll give it to the homeless and to the homeless shelters. And God gives that. I love that. God is so in love with other people. Even somebody without a blanket, God cares for. And then God says, and I want you to care for them as well. That's what being married to love is. So religion is not a set of legalisms and hoops to jump through. Religion boils down to being in love. And I don't know if you know this, but the word worship means kiss. That when we go to Mass, we believe God is kissing us. And we're supposed to pay that kiss forward to everybody else. And I just love that. Once a week, we come to be kissed by God so that that kiss echoes in other people's lives. And like there's this kid who was just named to be blessed. He was beatified. His name was Carlo Acutis. Did anybody ever pay attention to that? Just this side of the church? Well, he kind of interesting. Like he was this Italian kid who, when he was 7 years old, he wanted to receive his first communion. And his parents were Catholic, but they had long given up the faith, except he really wanted to go to First Communion. So he goes to First Communion, and he falls in love with God. And he brings his parents back to the church. And he had this devotion to the Eucharist and the Rosary. And it's kind of interesting because he was also a computer geek. He rebuilt his own computer. I don't even know what that means. But he built his own computer and had this devotion to the Eucharist. But even as a kid, he would ride his bike in Italy. He's in Milan. And he would go visit the homeless, just the street people. Or he's known that if some kid was getting picked on in school, Carlos would defend him. If some kid was upset because their parents were getting divorced, he would take them under his wing. Like this odd connection between the Eucharist and trying to love other people. And he came down with leukemia. He dies of leukemia. But interestingly enough, he met this other woman who also was diagnosed. He says, I'm gonna pray my rosary for you. And he wasn't interested in him getting healed. He was concerned about other people. So he's named the patron saint of the internet because he was kind of this computer geek. And what he really loved was soccer and Nike shoes. If I was a Nike executive, I'd turn that into a computer. You wear Nikes, you could become a saint in the Catholic Church. Just do it. But so he's being investigated as a saint, and they exhume his body. And it turns out to be an incorruptible. He died in 2006. And, you can go online and look at him. He just looks like he's sleeping in his Nikes. And he's just this 15-year-old. But I just mentioned that because isn't that what we're supposed to do in our religion? In the Eucharist, we're kissed by God, And we're supposed to pass that act of love on to everyone without excuses. So for us, love is a verb. You can't come up with an excuse not to love people. That's what Pharisees do. Pharisees love to say they love Jesus. Or sorry, not Jesus. They love God. But you never really see them do anything for other people. Love is a verb. And when Christ gives us the commandment to love everyone unconditionally with all our heart, mind, and strength, he's not commanding us to do something impossible. It's something we're meant to live like. I know it's hard. For me, it's going to be a long climb up to the top of that mountain. But every day I do say the Shema, to pray to love God with all my heart, mind, and strength, and everybody else. I don't care if it takes a lifetime. I want to get to the top of that mountain. As I said, God's not commanding us to do something impossible like fly or grow to 6'3" or to actually dance to the rhythm of the music. I just think with a lifetime of the Eucharist and prayer, we can learn to love all people. Christ wants to teach us that. And you pray so that becomes the real desire of our heart. And so I love this where a very famous rabbi once said, don't ask where God is, ask when God is. Whenever you see a united community that loves other people, there is God. Well, what if in our homes, love is written above the door of every home? What if we're a whole nation and community that really strives to love after other people? That's when God is. Or look at the early church, where there's this famous document where the emperor wants to know, what about these Christian people? So this guy writes the emperor because he investigates the Christians. And this is a great line where he says, these people, see how they love each other. They care for the sick and the poor. They don't think of themselves, they think of others. I love that line. See how they love each other. That should be the core theology of our religion. And so when Jesus says, yes, what is your religion, the summation of your religion? It all comes into love. And so just imagine, as I said, there are billions of Catholics throughout the world, right? Largest religion ever. What if billions of people in this world suddenly took the words of Jesus for literally and strove with all their heart, mind, and strength to love each other? It would be a new dawn. And so, together, let us stand and profess our faith.